said, come on over, baby, baby, you can't go wrong. We ain't faking, whole lot of shaking going on. Well, I said, come on over, baby, we got chicken in the bone. Woo, honey, come on over, baby, really got the bull by the horn. We ain't faking, whole lot of shaking going on. Hi, my name's Jez, and as you can perhaps tell from the videos on my YouTube channel, I like to play rock and roll on the ukulele. And by rock and roll I mean the 1950s rock and roll of the likes of Jerry Lee Lewis, whose song that was a little snippet of, whole lot of shaking going on, and Elvis Presley, Carl Perkins, Chuck Berry, Gene Vincent, Little Richard. There are loads of them. Now, before you play rock and roll on the ukulele, it's a really good idea to have a good grasp of the 12-bar blues chord progression. Loads of great rock and roll songs used a 12-bar blues chord progression or variations of it, such as A Whole Lot of Shaking Going On, the song I just played, Hound Dog, Shake, Rattle and Roll, Roll Over Beethoven, Long Tall Sally, Johnny Be Good, Good Golly Miss Molly, Bebop-a-Lula. There's a massive list. So, if you've got a good grasp of the 12-bar blues chord progression and can play it in 2 or 3 different keys, then without too much trouble you should be able to play all of those great songs and more. Now, there are lots of different variations of this chord progression, and the one I used just now was a fairly standard version, really. I played it in the key of G, which is a really good key for rock and roll on the ukulele. So here's the chord progression I played. I played 4 bars on G, 2 bars on C, back to G for 2 bars, 1 bar on D7, 1 on C, 1 on G, and finally 1 of D7. Going back to the D7 at the very end of the chord progression like that is sometimes called the turnaround. It just seems to indicate that the chord progression is about to start all over again. You don't have to play that. Sometimes people just play 2 bars of G instead of 1 of G and 1 of D7. Of course, you wouldn't play the turnaround D7 at the very end of the song. Okay, so I'll play the chord progression round a few times so that you can join in and get to grips with it. Play a very simple strumming pattern to start off with. I'll talk more about the strumming pattern in a moment. So here we go. Oh, just a little thing. Sometimes I play a G7 just before moving up to the C for the first time. So that means I play 3 bars of G, 1 of G7 before moving to the C. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's the G7, up to C, back to G, D7, C, G, the D7, back to G, G7 coming up to C, back to G, D7, sometimes I play a C9 here, G, one more time, up to C, back to G, D7, and C9, G, stay there. Okay, so that's the 12-bar blues chord progression that I use when playing a whole lot of shaking going on. Now a little word about the strumming pattern. Now, one of the best strumming patterns to use when playing rock and roll is what's sometimes called a train rhythm. And I'm playing down strums and up strums all the time. No miss strums, well, sometimes miss strums actually. I'll explain that in a minute. But for the main strumming pattern, it's down strums, 1 on the beat and 1 up strum in between the beats. Now you can play it with a shuffle rhythm, so it sounds like this. Sort of bouncy. like that, or you can play it straight like this, where the strums are all evenly spaced. But it sounds much better if you stress the backbeat. That's one of the main characteristics of rock and roll, really, is the emphasis on the backbeat. That's beats 2 and 4 in a bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you're strumming, you just hit the strings a little harder on those beats, so it sounds like this, with the straight rhythm, like this. Here it is without the stresses, and here it is with them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And here is the bouncy shuffle version of that, with the stressed backbeat. Okay, so that's the strumming pattern I would suggest using on these songs. Okay, to play rock and roll in the key of G, you need to replace some of the chords with what I call chord riffs. A riff is a repeating musical phrase. This is a 1-bar chord riff, so you replace every bar of G with one of these. And what it involves is this. It involves playing a G, a standard G major chord like that, and adding your little finger or your pinky onto the 4th fret of the 3rd string. And that's playing a 6th note, so it's a G add 6, something like that. And what you do is you play that 6th note on the backbeat, on beats 2 and 4, just for the down strum. So slowly the rhythm sounds like this. Can you see, I'm just playing the 6th note on the down strum, and I've lifted my little finger up before I come to play the up strum that immediately follows that. Faster it sounds like this. So that's the basic G chord riff. Now you can make that a little more interesting by adding a 7th note as well, and what you do is you add a 7th note on the 3rd beat in the bar. Again, it's just on the beat where you strum down, you bring your finger off for the up strum that follows immediately. So you're still playing the 6th notes on beats 2 and 4, but also adding a 7th on beat 3. And slowly that sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, fast. That can be a little bit of a stretch for some people, I think, but give it a go and see how you get on. If you can't manage that, then it sounds great with just the 6th notes there. Now, sometimes I make this one even more interesting, if that were possible, by sliding up to the chord. You slide up to the chord, up to the 1st beat like that. So you don't actually play a down strum on the 1st beat. You slide up to it. The chord is made. It's sort of an F sharp up to a G. You play that F sharp on the up strum at the very end of a bar, just before the 1st beat of the next bar. So it sounds like this. And adding the 7th note as well, putting it all together, that can sound like this.